contributes to your personal identity?
Because I've grown up in the town and I live there now and used to.
I think your country's going to be in 100 years' time from now.
I think we'd still be in the EU, but it would have a different name, and we would have lots more technology.
How do you see around in 100 years' time from now?
In 100 years' time, I think the area will have more modern buildings and more transport.
I feel European because we're in Europe, but I feel British because we're an island race.
How do you see your local area in 100 years' time?
My local area, in 100 years' time, it'll be as multicultural as it is now, maybe even more so, and we'll still be British, but still be working with our partners in Europe, having friends and going on holiday there.
Now that we have joined Europe and we don't have the Commonwealth that we had in the past, I think it's vital that we are part of Europe. I don't think England can survive without Europe any longer.
How do you think England will sit in 100 years' time in the world?
We're becoming a more and more minority nation. From once having an empire and ruling the world, we're just shrinking away. We're giving it all away.
We just interviewed a man about what he thinks of us being part of the EU, but he thinks that once we was a really strong empire, he thinks that we was a great nation, but now we've become part of the EU, he thinks that we've just been giving the country away.
He thinks that we should be part of the EU, but doesn't think that we should be giving loads away. Do you reckon we should be part of the EU?
No,
Why?
I don't think we should. I think we spend far too much money in Europe. Greece is in trouble, and if we keep helping other people out, we're going to be in trouble. I honestly think we ought to become neutral. We ought to make as many weapons as we possibly can and sell them all to the Arabs.
Okay, and how do you see the UK in 100 years' time?
It's critical, that question, because it could go a number of different ways. We could be absorbed into the EU, which I wouldn't be happy about, but many people would. Or we could be an independent country trading with the world and dealing with all sides of everything all over the world, rather than just pooling our resources into the EU.
Richard? What do they trade for in the EU?
What do they trade for? What the products? Or
Yeah.
do you mean, well, I would say that there are problems on the agricultural side because it's heavily subsidised in the EU. Massive taxation is raised to support the French farmers, for example. So I would say the EU is predominantly manufacturing, which is what we are as well. So we're trading with people who make essentially what we make, which isn't easy because you're trying to sell things to people who are already doing it.
Files, can I just remind you, just as I've said, you've got to ask if you feel guilty.
I was born here. I think you're always proud of the place where you are born, even when you move to a different country, and you can be part of that as well. But you always have an allegiance, I think, to the place where you're born. I was born in Yorkshire, and I feel quite protective about Yorkshire, although I haven't lived in it since the age of 5. So I am proud to be British, because I think we've got an amazing history, and on balance we are kind, we look after other people if we can. If there's ever an issue about charity and giving, the British always dig deep and give more than anybody else. So I am proud of my country, yes.
What forms your British identity?
My heritage, if we all look back in our families, we'll find we come from all kinds of places. Historically, I've got Dutch, Danish, Irish, and those are the ones I know about. But the families all came here to settle here, and my identity is definitely British. I wouldn't turn up for the Dutch if they had a problem, but I would for the British.
What do you think, what are the things
that we can be proud of? So what things do we associate British people to?
Okay, we can be proud of our human rights and the way we've always been a beacon of democracy. We've shown other people how to administrate their own countries, and I also think that we've been good at helping other people in the crisis, in war and things like that, because when we've helped, at the end of the day, when it's all over, we've always left. We've never occupied. It's not like the Soviet Union were there in the Second World War, but when they'd helped and won, they wouldn't leave. So the Eastern Bloc of Europe was essentially occupied by people who were resented. So I don't think we're really resented. We are to a degree, but I'm proud to be British.
If you were the person in control, then would you think yourself as part of the EU?
I'm not in control. I would never accept that we are bound by the EU, because in my view, this is my view, we don't need their regulations. We are a world trader. We should make our own to accommodate world markets, not just the European market. So I'm very unhappy that products are being stopped and banned for no good reason. Even silly things like manhole covers we can't do anymore unless they're up to the French design. It's ridiculous, things like that. It's putting his own.
We're off to the back.
I think she's looking at my tonsils at the moment.
I've got another question here.
How do you see your local area changing in 100 years?
There's a lot of modernisation that's going to happen, obviously, over 100 years. We're going to have problems if we're going to be bringing in more and more people, particularly from Europe, because they are coming here. We'll need a lot more housing, so there'll be a lot less green and open spaces, and we're going to have to upgrade in all sorts of ways, and we will do over the next 100 years. We have their way, and we will be an independent nation trading with the world, which is what we should be doing.
So do you think there'll be the great empire that could they bring back that great empire that they once were?
No, nobody's ever again going to have an empire the way the British had the empire. And lots of people knock the empire, but I would say of the empires it was probably the best, because it was the most kind to the people who were in it. And in fact some of the countries actually didn't want to leave when we told them it was over. And some have applied to rejoin, like Fiji, who have said, sorry, it's finished. And we still have actually 14 dependent territories who are, strictly speaking, they're still the empire. They're dependent territories. And one was Anguilla in the Caribbean, which was given independence with Nevis and St Kitts. And the Nevis police force went to Anguilla to enforce it because they weren't taking down the Union flag. So they did it for them and they took it down. The locals came out and punched them and sent them back into the boat, took down the flag of independence, put back the Union flag, and it's still part of the independent territories today. The Foreign Office don't want it because to them it's just money, they don't want it. But the people wanted it because they wanted to be associated with us. So we're not hated all over the world.
Yep.